The Cannonball Run. You've set the record. Do I have that correct?
Yep, back in 2013, we were the fastest team to have done it.
About 10 years ago. Tell me a little bit about that. Why did you want to do it? Of course, we all know about the famous Burt Reynolds movie, Cannonball Run from the 70s. But why did you want to do it? How did you do it as the fastest guy or the
So when I
fastest?
was growing up, consuming everything I could from automotive journalism and literature, I didn't grow up in a car-loving household, but I remember just sitting around the dinner table one night and talking to my dad. We read about these 0 to 60 times and track tests and quarter mile tests and top speed shootouts and stuff like that. But I really would love to see what car would drive to grandma's house the fastest. Like, what would be super cool is if we put the best cars and the best drivers on one side of the country and they just race to the other side of the country. And my dad goes, "Oh, yeah, Cannonball. That does sound a lot like you." And it blew my mind that that was a real thing. And even beyond finding the movie very easily, finding out that, in the 1970s, Brock Yates and Steve Smith from Car and Driver organized real races across the country. And I just thought that was the coolest thing ever. And I really spent the next decade of my life trying to figure out what it would take to do that in a modern context, because in 2001, Brock Yates wrote a book called Cannonball, where he kind of chronicled the history of the events. And one of the things that he said in the epilogue was that it was impossible to advance on the times from back then today because there were twice as many cars on the road, twice as many cops. The penalties for getting caught speeding were so much higher. Nobody would be stupid enough to even try. And even if they tried, it isn't possible. And he thought the 30-hour wall was something that could never be beaten just because of, the logistics involved. And so during my time in college, I actually saw Alex Roy and Dave Maher advance the time for the first time since 1983. And so that was a moon landing to me, because it just brought this crazy idea into a new and modern context that I was fascinated with. And so I, continued to kind of research the right car, the right gadgets, the right team, the right approach, the right route, all the things. And it really just became the Super Bowl of being me as a car enthusiast. And when I wrote the book about it afterwards, I kind of opened it with a letter to my son saying, "Man, as your dad, the only thing that I honestly care about is making sure that you understand that God loves you even more than I ever could. And that if you can understand salvation through Jesus, then I've done everything that I need to as your dad. But if I can teach you one more thing, it's that as you go through life, as you try to define yourself in this world, as you try to set out in your career, if you can find your version of what Cannonball was for me, a way for you to prove, not to the rest of the world, but to yourself, that you've developed the skill sets, you've developed the abilities that you want to prove and cement and show the world and show everybody else." I think, this was that for me. And it was problem solving. It was an automotive challenge. It was a driving challenge. It was a logistical challenge. It was a managing risk in many, many, many ways. And I think, for me to have been able to pull into the Portofino 2 hours and 14 minutes faster than the record at that point, a record that then stood for 6 years and really changed, I hope, the way that people approach the idea. We've now documented over 350 Cannonball times over the course of the last 120 years, and really been able to see backwards and forwards. I mean, there was just another drive last night that arrived safely. There might be one tonight. I don't know, who could say, but it's so much fun to see autonomous records and electric car records and round trip records and northern route, southern route, coast to coast. Like it's been an explosion of enthusiasm, and it's been an honor to see it.
Well, share a couple of stories from that record-breaking run. What kind of car was it, and what do you remember the most from the journey?
For sure. So we took a 2004 Mercedes CL55 AMG that I bought with every dollar I had off of Craigslist and put every gadget on the credit cards that they would take. We had 2 extra fuel tanks, 3 radar detectors, 2 laser jammers, an ambulance traffic light changer, CB radio, police scanner, kill switches for all the lights. Obviously, everything that we could possibly have to be able to do this as safely as possible, given the resources. And fortunately, that was in 2013, and we saw that gas prices were high, trucks were just starting to have speed limiters, and so some circumstances that made it a little bit easier to do it were starting to come out. Waze was out, but not really in full use, and so it wasn't exactly the same thing as going out today and doing it. But it was a really, really fun challenge. The biggest thing that we ran into that almost derailed the thing for a few minutes was I didn't know that you had to tell your credit card companies that you were going to be traveling, and Amex has these algorithms that overlays with charges and flight paths. And so when we got to our second fuel stop in Groom, Texas, I swiped all my cards and they all got rejected. And my co-driver and our navigator had gone in to use the bathroom, and I'm yelling like, "Hey guys, come out here! We need." And so apparently, I got a phone call that explained this to me a few minutes later after we'd finally gotten back on the road after a 12-minute fuel stop, which is like the worst possible imaginable, thing that could happen on a cannonball. Well, we checked, and there was no way, given the flights that are available, that you could have gone from that place in Ohio to that place in Texas in that amount of time. That's why we flagged it. I said, well, I'm not going to explain to you why it's actually possible, but I would like you to approve absolutely everything that goes on those cards for the next 24 hours. I promise you they won't leave my site. And so, it's one of those things that you just never really know a lot of these things until you get out there. I've done it 9 times since then in old junky cars and had a blast. But, to go out there all out, see what was possible, that was a blast.
It's its own culture, isn't it? The Cannonball Run.
It is. And that's the cool thing about the automotive culture is it's something that you don't have to grow out of. It's not like playing sports as a kid or, the things that we can't do always. There's always somebody that's obsessed with whatever it is that you are in cars. And I think, to see so many people at our phase in life that kind of come into the cannonball world for whatever way, with whatever kind of approach, and they just find that there's people here and that they get to swap stories and go to swap meets and go to all the things that you get to do and get together for reunions and old junky car runs and all the things that we do. It has been a tremendous honor to kind of be a bit of a figurehead in that world for the last decade.
What was the total time when you were 2 hours and 14 under?
We did it in 28 hours, 50 minutes, and that was a 100.3 mile an hour moving average.
Incredible. When's the last time you did it?
I did it last year. A guy organized a period correct race, so all the cars had to be pre-1984. And so we ran a 1976 Rolls-Royce Silver Shadow and dressed as the Sheiks from Cannonball Run, which didn't get me shot, which I was amazed by. But that was good fun. Leaked a lot of oil.
Yeah, I bet.